From the time I was in kindergarten until about 8th grade, the only present I asked for my birthday or Christmas was a Lego set. And almost always, without fail, I would get one. I must have had close to 100 different Lego sets given to me by different family members by the time I got through junior high. I had castles and fire trucks, space stations and world monuments. I had buckets of surplus blocks and bricks that spilled out to build my whole Lego world. And to populate this world was my small army of plastic people. Each set came with an instruction book. The book would show you step by step how to take the individual blocks and pieces and put them together to make the finished product. I'd sit there for hours, counting the bumps on each block, trying to match them up to the picture in the booklet, until finally the object took form and my Lego world would expand. I will admit that there were times of frustration, times when I couldn't quite make out what the instructions were trying to communicate. Perhaps if you've ever assembled a piece of IKEA furniture, you can sympathize with this experience. There can be a certain ambiguity between a picture and its representation in the world. With practice, though, I found myself needing the instructions less and less. I learned simply to intuit the logic and order behind the bricks combined with the final image, in the same fashion as you might do with a jigsaw puzzle. This was a world of order for me, a world with clear rules and expectations as to what the final outcome would be. There was room for imagination, but even that was confined to a nice, neat grid. The thing is, though, life isn't as orderly as a Lego set. The pieces don't all fit together the way we think they should, and life sure doesn't come with an instruction book. Not even the canon of world literature seems to provide a clear guide in this ever-changing world. Things can be interpreted in so many ways. What once was ultimate truth has since been called into question. Today we live in a world where there seems to be so few clear-cut answers, a world without that instruction book to guide us through. And it's not always an easy thing to accept. This actuality can cause feelings of fear and anxiety, and that's understandable. Not knowing can be a very scary thing, but it's all part of the reality of the human condition. Even in this age where science delves deeper and deeper into the mysteries of life and the universe, it still seems there are things that will always remain unknown, things that lie beyond the scope of scientific inquiry, questions that can only be answered in retrospect. Questions like, what will happen tomorrow or next year? Or how will I be understood by others? Answers to questions like these are beyond our ability to know without having the experience behind us. Each new situation brings with it a certain degree of uncertainty and surprise, varying it just ever so slightly from the situations before. We can try to plan and communicate to avoid major pitfalls and misunderstandings. We can try to strategize and recognize patterns. But when it's all said and done, we ultimately have to take that leap of faith and trust in one another. It's definitely not an easy thing to do, to admit that our lives can be unpredictable, and at times we may need the help of others to get us through. But it's my belief that we are made stronger in recognizing these truths, that in admitting that the world is uncertain and we may need help, we are in turn more willing to reach out for help and to offer help to one another. Again and again in my own life, I have seen just how uncertain things can be, how quickly we can be propelled from the comfortable world of the known into the mystery beyond. There was a time when I thought that same sort of order that applied to my Lego sets could be found in the real world, if only I looked hard enough. But the truth is that the harder I have looked, the more uncertain the future seems. It reminds me of that old adage about the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. The future is indeed uncertain, but we have no choice but to move forward anyway. And remember to support one another through this journey. I've been given permission to share the following story with you as part of this sermon today. Ordinarily, I wouldn't share a conversation of this personal nature, but seeing as it took place between one of my favorite aunts and myself, it was a little easier to ask for permission. The other day, I received a phone call from my Aunt Michelle in Alaska. She's been having some pretty severe health problems lately. Unfortunately for her, the standard of care she has access to isn't exactly what you would call top-notch. Part of this is due to the geographic location and resources available locally, and the rest is due to the levels of care her insurance company will cover. What started as an infection in her foot after stepping on a piece of metal has since spread through her whole leg, causing it to swell and become discolored. While in the process of trying to discover what's going on with her foot and leg, the doctors found a lump in Michelle's neck. Tests are still being conducted to determine a diagnosis. The doctors have mentioned cancer, but said it's still too early to tell for sure. As my aunt talked on the phone, she told me she was afraid. She told me she was in pain and afraid of what the results were going to come back with. She continued to tell me about everything going on. She told me that not only has this event impacted her physical health, but it's also started to impact her mental and emotional health as well. She is tired but can't seem to sleep. It's becoming increasingly hard for her to eat and keep food down without becoming sick. All of this has led her to feel discouraged and afraid. Most of our conversation together was spent with me simply listening, letting her share with me the burdens that most weighed on her soul and being. There were moments of silence that seemed to last an eternity. Moments when I wished there was something I could say or do to make it all better for my aunt. But I knew I couldn't fix anything for her. I'm not a medical doctor, and it's not my life. The choices and decisions that need to be made are not mine. So I just listened. When she had finished sharing her thoughts and emotions with me, I simply told her that I loved her and that she didn't have to go through this alone. I'd be here to talk with her, to support her as she navigates this uncertain time. My Aunt Michelle thanked me for this reminder, and we continued to talk about other things for a while longer. I could tell by the end of the phone call that her mood had improved drastically. Her tone was more responsive, and we even laughed while reminiscing about the past. This call reminded me of the power reaching out to others can have in our lives. How even when there's nothing we can say or seemingly nothing we can do, sometimes it is enough simply to provide a listening presence, to be there, to bear witness to the trials of another, letting their pain and sorrow be heard, reminding them that they are loved and don't have to go through anything alone. My aunt and I talked again yesterday afternoon while I was writing this sermon. She seems to be doing much better. There's still some anxiety around what the test will reveal, but she also knows that whatever happens, she no longer has to face it alone. All she has to do is pick up the phone and reach out, and someone will be there to support her. It's easy in life to have these situations of uncertainty and get caught up on the negative aspects of them, to get caught up in the fear and anxiety of the great unknown. But if we remember that none of us has to go through life alone, and that we embrace the mystery together, uncertainty can be transformed into something truly amazing. We simply have to be willing to trust that we will be supported and take that leap of faith. A little over a year and a half ago, I was put in a position where I had to make a choice between embracing the unknown or staying where I was comfortable in the known of my life. The choice was presented one afternoon when a letter arrived in the mail announcing that I had been accepted into Star King School for the Ministry. When I received the letter, I had no idea just how much my life would change in such a short time, or what truly was in store for me. But I said yes anyway. I chose to take that leap and step into the unknown. When the letter came in that late July day, I was a little surprised. I had spent months trying to decide whether or not even to apply to seminary. However, I finally managed to get my application finished, and with a little encouragement from my husband, submitted it just under the deadline. The news coming at such a late time in the year made it hard for me to really plan a move. I had anticipated being accepted, but I was taught as a child by my mom that you never count your chickens before they've hatched. So I waited. I waited before I made any concrete plans, simply having faith that one way or another, things would work out. My husband, Elliot, stayed up in Washington for the first few months I was down here in California. Part of this was due to his employment at the time, and the rest was due to our lack of living situation. Luckily, I had a friend here in the Bay Area, my friend Cammie from high school, who lived in Oakland and agreed that I could crash on her couch for a while. So I set out. With just 2 bags of clothes packed, I left my home, my husband, my dog, my whole life up until that point, and stepped into a completely unknown situation. There was definitely a sense of anxiety about leaving all of these things, but through it all, my husband Elliot just kept reminding me to have faith, telling me again and again that things would work out. Even though his words did comfort me, I still had a lot of doubt about what I was doing when I made this move. I kept asking myself things like, who goes to seminary anyway? And am I sure this is what I'm really supposed to be doing with my life? And am I good enough to be a minister? When school started, however, I found myself surrounded by people who were willing to help me navigate this new world, this new reality, to help me wrestle with and find answers to these questions. I still hadn't found an apartment by this point, but there seemed to be no shortage of classmates and colleagues willing to take me in. I felt truly blessed and affirmed in the decision I made to take that leap. Eventually, thankfully, I did find an apartment. My husband, Elliot, was able to join me and find a job here. But our lives have changed a lot as a result of this leap. And I'm sure that they will continue to change in the years ahead. The one thing I know is that no matter what uncertainty may be in the future, I no longer need to feel doubt about facing it. For I know that I do not have to face these things alone, as long as there are communities like these. Today, I am grateful I took that leap of faith that landed me here in this pulpit. It's true that it has not always been easy. There are still moments of doubt, but I know that it will all work out. I just need to have faith and reach out and ask for the help and support needed. We are not the first people to express fear and anxiety about the unknown. We are not the first generations to set out into the great mystery together, stumbling forward at times seeming only to make progress by accident. We are but the newest link in the chain forged that reaches back through the ages, a chain that intimately connects us one to another in such a way that our actions will hold sway over those who come after us, just as the actions of those before have held sway over us. It's true that life can be uncertain, and it's hard to know if we are doing the right things. At times, it can feel like we have no control over anything. But through coming together in community, we can live into that great promise that no one needs to do anything alone. A promise that has been passed down through the ages to us here. A promise that we affirm to one another in hopes that we will have the strength to take that leap of faith for ourselves. So I ask you this: can we deepen our commitment and trust in one another in a way that truly provides the support necessary to navigate the great mysteries ahead? Can we be a people who constantly reach out in support of each other? Can we say yes to life together and move boldly into the unknown? I believe that it is within each of us here to provide comfort and support we need to navigate this life. But can we truly trust in one another so that these gifts can be brought into their fullness in this community, so that we can be the courageous people who are not afraid of uncertainty and mystery, but rather embrace it? As I said before, life isn't as neat and orderly as a Lego set. There's no instruction book and no clear way to fit all the pieces together. But somehow, in knowing that I don't have to face this mystery alone, I am able to find a degree of excitement in the unknown. Amen, and blessed be.